Welcome to another book review by Elaine Allen, because I have opinions. Today we're reviewing A Room with a View by Forster. So I went into this book thinking way too much. I expected it to be a book that you had to analyze and dissect to appreciate, partially because I've read aspects of the novel, and so I know that Forster sees story and characters as the least important parts of the novel, whereas theme and language are the most important. But at its core, this is a love story. It is the story of a young woman who meets a man she shouldn't approve of while on vacation and falls for him. This is a simple story. And yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. There's class problems, religions, propriety, a second guy who's a bit of an ass, and a buttload of philosophy and metaphor. But I'm not interested in that. Like, yeah, if this was a lit class, I'd be ready to jump into a discussion about the freedom represented by Italy, and the metaphor of people at a distance as represented by views from hilltops. But fuck that. This isn't lit class, and I firmly believe that a book that can't be enjoyed outside of a literature class is not worth reading. If you don't enjoy reading a book, then you're not going to pick it up. You're not going to read it. And it could be the biggest masterpiece in the world, but if nobody's reading it, it's useless. Now, what I want to talk about with this book is honesty. Hilariously, this is a book that is decidedly about the contrast of speaking plainly and honestly versus the impersonal, shallow language of polite society, while also being a book that makes little to no attempt at clear, straightforward language. Early in the book, this is addressed as delicacy versus kindness, and as a Southerner, this is something that hit home. I recognized it. It's the contrast of polite language that strives to never broach any disagreeable topics versus actually caring about people's feelings and talking about the things that affect people. And honestly, the book is more than a little bit preachy in its insistence that society will only become a paradise when we stop being delicate and start being kind with others and ourselves. But the book is beautifully written. The words are just lovely. Though sometimes I did want to reach into the book, slap the author, and say, just tell us what happened. But hell, I'm pretty sure that was part of the point. In the beginning, when Lucy has yet to learn to be honest and kind instead of delicate, the language of the actual text describing events is washier, more metaphorical and less clear. When Lucy starts to become clear with what she wants, the language clarifies. I did struggle with how much of her journey was predicated by other people, mostly men. She tended to do whatever the last person she admired indicated she should. Her two biggest revelations were sparked by the man she falls in love with and his father. Like, they literally tell her what to do, she realizes they are right, and she does it. And I could not stop being aware of how privileged they all were. That's partially because they talked about it. Like, they spend good portions of the novel discussing the merits of crumbling class hierarchy, discussing marriage between classes and social mobility, while treating servants and the Italian peasants as little better than children. I mean, a guy is stabbed to death, and it is ultimately just a road sign on Lucy's journey of self-discovery. But what really impressed me most about this book was that the characters, many of them start out representing something. The prudish old maid represents outdated social structures. The learned clergy represents self-aggrandizing intellectualism. The eccentric old man represents the break from convention and the wisdom of the lower class. And yet by the end, they weren't straw men. They weren't symbols. They were characters who I cared about. Whatever Forster intended, he painted them blessedly human. And that makes for a book that I can care about.